Captain Veltar pressed his webbed hands against the control panel, watching the last of the power indicators fade to black. The engine core of the merchant vessel, Gentle Current, had finally died, leaving them drifting in the cold darkness between stars. Around him, his crew moved with the calm efficiency that came from years of peaceful trading across the galaxy, but he could see the worry in their large, dark eyes. "How long do we have?" he asked his chief engineer, a younger Zephyrian whose blue-green skin had turned pale with stress. "The life support will last maybe 20 days if we shut down everything else," came the reply. "The backup generator can keep basic systems running, but not much more." Veltar nodded slowly. His people were traders and diplomats, not warriors or engineers. They had traveled the space lanes for 300 years without ever needing to fight or repair battle damage. The Gentle Current was built for comfort in cargo space, not survival in deep space. When the engine had exploded during their jump, they had been lucky to survive at all. "Where are we?" he asked the navigator. "The edge of an uninhabited system. The star charts show nothing here. No colonies, no stations, no traffic lanes." The navigator's voice carried the weight of bad news. "We are far from any help." Veltar looked out through the main viewport at the strange yellow star in the distance. It was smaller than the red giants his people preferred, but it had several planets orbiting it. The sensors showed at least one world in what other species might call a habitable zone, but their equipment was too damaged to tell them more. "Sir," his communications officer spoke up, "I could send out a distress call on all frequencies. Maybe someone will hear us." "Who would be listening in an empty system?" the engineer asked. Veltar thought about this. In all his years of trading, he had learned that the galaxy was full of surprises. Sometimes species developed in the most unlikely places. Sometimes old colonies were forgotten on the star charts. Sometimes ships passed through systems that were supposed to be empty. "Send the call," he decided. "Use the standard galactic distress signal. Include our location and the fact that we need help with our engines or rescue. Make it clear that we are peaceful traders." The communications officer worked at his station for several minutes. The distress beacon was simple but effective. It would broadcast their location, their species identification, and a basic message explaining their situation. The signal would repeat every hour until their power finally died. "Message ready, Captain. Send it." The signal went out into the void, spreading in all directions at the speed of light. It would take time to reach anywhere that mattered, but it was their only hope. Meanwhile, 93 light-years away, Dr. Sarah Chen was finishing her night shift at Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Station. The facility sat on a mountain in Chile, its massive radio telescopes pointed toward the stars. Her job was to listen for signals from space, though most nights she heard nothing but cosmic background radiation and the occasional pulsar. She was about to log off when her computer flagged an unusual signal. At first she thought it might be interference from a satellite, but the pattern was too regular, too structured. She ran it through the analysis software and frowned at the results. "This can't be right," she muttered, running the analysis again. The signal showed mathematical patterns that suggested intelligence, not human intelligence. The mathematics were too clean, too perfect, and the signal was coming from a star system that Earth surveys had marked as empty. Sarah called her supervisor, Dr. James Wright, who arrived 20 minutes later looking annoyed at being woken up. "What do you have?" he asked. "A signal from space that shows signs of artificial origin. It's repeating every hour, and it's coming from the Kepler 442 system." Dr. Wright studied the data on her screens. "Could be a natural phenomenon we haven't seen before." "I don't think so." "Look at this." Sarah highlighted sections of the signal. "These look like mathematical constants. Pi, the golden ratio, prime number sequences. Someone is trying to show they understand mathematics. Or it's a very strange pulsar. James, this is structured like a message. I think someone is trying to talk to us." Dr. Wright was quiet for a long moment. "Run it through every analysis program we have. If this is what you think it is, we need to be absolutely sure before we tell anyone." It took 6 hours of computer analysis to confirm what Sarah already knew in her heart. The signal was artificial. It was a message from another intelligent species. And based on the mathematical patterns, they were asking for help. The translation program was basic, but it managed to decode the core message, coordinates, a distress signal, and what appeared to be a request for assistance. The beings who sent it had included information about their species, Peaceful traders who meant no harm. My God, Dr. Wright whispered as he read the translation. This is really happening. Within 12 hours, the signal had been confirmed by monitoring stations around the world. Earth's governments held emergency meetings behind closed doors. Scientists worked around the clock to verify the message and improve the translation. The breakthrough came when linguist Dr. Maria Santos realized that parts of the message were mathematical descriptions of the sender's biology. They were aquatic beings from a water world, with a culture based on trade and diplomacy. They had been traveling space for centuries as merchants, moving between star systems in ships designed for comfort rather than war. The core message was heartbreakingly simple. To any who receive this, we are stranded and slowly dying. We mean no harm and ask only for rescue or guidance to safety. We are traders and diplomats from the Zephyrian Collective. Our ship is damaged beyond our ability to repair. Please help us. President Martinez stood in the Oval Office looking at the translation printout for the 10th time. Around her, advisors from every major department waited for her decision. How long would it take to reach them? She asked. Admiral Chen, the youngest person in the room, answered immediately. The UES Horizon could make the journey in 3 weeks. She's our newest deep space vessel, designed for exactly this kind of mission. What's the crew complement? 200. Scientists, diplomats, engineers, and a small security detail. Captain Santos has been preparing for first contact scenarios for 2 years. The president looked around the room. Recommendations? This could be a trap, warned the Secretary of Defense. We know nothing about these beings except what they tell us. Their ship is dying, countered the Secretary of Science. If they wanted to hurt us, why ask for help? This is the greatest moment in human history, added Dr. Chen, who had been brought in as an expert on the signal. We cannot ignore this opportunity. President Martinez made her decision. Admiral, prepare the Horizon for departure. I want our best people on this mission. If this is humanity's first contact with alien life, we're going to do it right. 3 days later, the UES Horizon launched from Earth's orbital shipyard. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge, watching Earth shrink behind them as they entered hyperspace. Her ship carried humanity's hopes and fears toward a meeting that would change everything. Behind them, the blue marble of Earth continued to turn, unaware that in 3 weeks nothing would ever be the same again. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, watching the stars shift back to normal as they dropped out of hyperspace. 3 weeks of travel had brought them to the edge of the Kepler 442 system, where Earth's first contact with alien life waited for them. Contact on sensors, reported Lieutenant Kim from the tactical station. Bearing 27 Mark IV, distance approximately 50,000 kilometers. On screen, the main viewer shimmered and revealed a ship unlike anything humans had ever built. It looked more like a piece of living coral than a spacecraft, with flowing curves and organic lines that seemed to grow rather than be constructed. Soft lights pulsed along its hull in gentle patterns, and even though it was clearly damaged, it remained beautiful. My God, whispered Dr. Elizabeth Harper, the mission's chief xenobiologist. It's gorgeous. Life signs? Santos asked. Confirmed. I'm reading approximately 40 beings aboard the vessel. Their life support appears to be failing. Santos nodded to her communications officer. Open a channel. Use the translation matrix we developed during the journey. Channel open, Captain. Santos took a deep breath. She was about to speak the first words between humanity and another intelligent species. Unknown vessel, this is Captain Maria Santos of the Earthship Horizon. We received your distress call and have come to help. For a moment, there was only static. Then a voice came through the speakers, translated by their computers into English. The voice sounded tired but filled with relief. Earthship Horizon, this is Captain Veltar of the Zephyrian vessel Gentle Current. We cannot express our gratitude. We had given up hope of rescue. We're here now, Captain Veltar. Can you tell us about your situation? Our engine core exploded during a jump 3 weeks ago. Life support is failing. We are traders and diplomats, not engineers. We cannot repair the damage ourselves. Santos looked at her chief engineer, Commander Torres, who nodded. We can help with that. Would you be willing to allow some of our people to come aboard and assess the damage? There was a pause. You would board our ship? You do not know us. We could be dangerous, Dr. Harper smiled. Your distress call included biological information about your species. You're aquatic beings from a peaceful culture. Besides, if you wanted to hurt us, you wouldn't ask us to come closer. This is true. Yes, we welcome your help, but I must warn you. Our ship is designed for water-breathing beings. You will need protective suits. We came prepared for that, Santos assured him. 2 hours later, a shuttle from the horizon docked with the alien vessel. The airlock cycled, and Captain Santos stepped aboard the first alien ship humans had ever visited. The corridors were filled with a breathable atmosphere, but everything was designed for beings who were comfortable in water. The walls curved like the inside of seashells, and soft bioluminescent panels provided gentle lighting. Captain Veltar was waiting for them in what appeared to be the ship's main meeting area. He stood about 7 feet tall with blue-green skin that looked smooth and wet. His large dark eyes were kind, and when he spoke, his voice had a musical quality that their translators barely captured. "Welcome aboard the Gentle Current," he said, making a gesture that their computers interpreted as a greeting. "I am Captain Veltar. I have been trading between the stars for 60 of your years." 60 years? Dr. Harper asked. "How long do your people live?" "We mature slowly. I am still considered young at 140 years. My people live for approximately 3 centuries. Santos introduced her team: engineers, scientists, diplomats, and medical personnel. Veltar's crew gathered around them, clearly curious but maintaining a respectful distance. The cultural exchange began immediately. "Your ship is beautiful," Dr. Harper said, running her hand along a curved wall. "It feels alive." "In a way it is," Veltar explained. "We grow our ships rather than build them. The hull is made from modified coral that we have bred for space travel. It repairs itself and adapts to conditions we encounter." Commander Torres was studying the damaged engine core with Veltar's engineer. "This is incredible technology," he said. "You're using controlled gravity wells to fold space. We're still using chemical rockets and basic fusion drives. You have only recently reached your own moon," Veltar said gently. "Every species develops at its own pace. What matters is not how fast you advance, but how you use what you learn." Dr. Sarah Kim, the mission's anthropologist, was fascinated by Zephyrian culture. "You said you're traders and diplomats. Do you have governments like we do?" "Not exactly. We have the Council of Currents, which makes decisions by consensus. No single being has absolute power. We believe that the best solutions come from many minds working together, like schools of fish moving as one." "And you've been traveling space for centuries?" "Yes, though we are not explorers like you appear to be. We are traders. We move between established worlds carrying goods and messages. We prefer to deal with civilized species who value peace and prosperity." Captain Santos felt a chill. "Established worlds? You mean there are many other intelligent species out there?" Veltar's large eyes looked troubled. "Oh yes, thousands of species, hundreds of civilizations. The galaxy is very old and very crowded, but..." He hesitated. "But what?" "Most of them are not like us. Most of them are not like you appear to be either. Tell me, humans of Earth, are you a warrior species?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Santos looked at her team, seeing her own uncertainty reflected in their faces. "We have wars," she admitted, "but we also have peace. We fight sometimes, but we also build and create and explore." "Why do you ask?" "Because the galaxy is controlled by those who view war as the highest form of culture. The hegemonic assembly rules most of known space, and they categorize all species by their military strength. Warriors rule. Peaceful beings like my people. We survive by being useful to them." Dr. Harper leaned forward. "What happens to species that aren't warriors? If they are peaceful and useful like the Zephyrians, they are allowed to exist as servants and traders. If they are peaceful but have nothing to offer..." Veltar made a gesture that the computers couldn't translate, but his meaning was clear. "And if they're warriors?" "Then they face the integration trials, a series of military tests to determine their rank in the assembly hierarchy. Those who pass become junior members. Those who fail..." He didn't need to finish. Commander Torres looked up from his work on the engine. "How long before we can get you moving again?" "With your help, perhaps 2 days. Your tools and materials are more advanced than ours in some ways." "Good. We should head back to Earth as soon as possible. Your people need proper medical attention, and our governments need to know about this galactic situation." Veltar's skin changed color slightly, becoming more blue than green. "Captain Santos, there is something else I must tell you. The Assembly has been aware of your species for some time. They have been watching Earth, Santos felt ice in her stomach. Watching us? For how long? Decades. They have classified humanity as a developing warrior species. They were planning to make contact soon to begin your integration trials. When? Within the next few years. But now, Veltar looked troubled. Your rescue of us may accelerate their timeline. They will see it as a sign that you are ready for contact. Santos activated her communicator. Horizon, this is the captain. Prepare for immediate departure. We're bringing our guests with us and heading home at maximum speed. Problems, Captain? Came the reply. Potentially very big problems. I'll brief you when we're aboard. As the two crews worked together to repair the gentle current enough for the journey to Earth, Captain Santos couldn't shake the feeling that they had just opened a door that could never be closed again. Humanity's dream of peaceful first contact might be about to become a nightmare of galactic warfare. But as she watched her engineers working alongside Veltar's crew, sharing knowledge and building trust, she also felt something else. Hope. If these peaceful traders could survive in a galaxy dominated by warriors, maybe humanity could find its own path among the stars. The question was whether they would have time to prepare for what was coming. The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks with the damaged Zephyrian ship in tow. During that time, Captain Veltar spent hours with the human crew, sharing knowledge and stories. But as they got closer to Earth, his mood grew darker, and Captain Santos began to understand why. Tell me about the assembly, she said during one of their evening meetings in the Horizons conference room. Around the table sat her senior staff and Veltar, with Dr. Harper taking notes on everything. Veltar's skin shifted to a deeper blue. A color they had learned indicated stress or sadness among his people. The hegemonic assembly has ruled the galaxy for over 2,000 years. It began as an alliance between 3 warrior species who believed that military strength was the true measure of civilization. What do they believe exactly? Dr. Kim asked. That conflict makes species stronger. That only through war can a civilization reach its full potential. They see peaceful species like mine as incomplete, failed evolutionary experiments. Commander Torres leaned forward. But they let you trade freely. We serve a purpose. We carry their goods, deliver their messages, and provide services they consider beneath warriors. We are useful, so we are tolerated, but we are never equals. Santos felt a chill. What about species that resist them? There have been many over the centuries. Some fought bravely and earned respect before being conquered. Others, Veltar paused. Others were made examples of. The assembly does not tolerate defiance from those they consider inferior. How do they decide who's inferior? Through the integration trials. When they make contact with a new species, they study their military capabilities, their weapons, their strategies. Then they design a series of tests. Battles, really, that escalate in difficulty. Dr. Harper looked up from her notes. What kind of battles? It varies. Sometimes they attack orbital installations. Sometimes they invade colony worlds. Sometimes they send champion fighters to duel your best warriors. The trials are designed to test every aspect of your military culture. And if you pass these trials, you become a junior member of the assembly. Your species gets a small voice in the council, protection from other threats, and access to some galactic technology. You also get the honor of helping them test other species. Santos felt sick. And if you fail? Slavery. Your worlds become resource extraction sites. Your people become workers and servants. Your culture is preserved in museums. The room fell silent. Finally, Torres spoke. You said they've been watching Earth. What do they know about us? Veltar's skin became even darker. Too much. They have scout ships that have been observing your world for decades. They know about your weapons, your wars, your technology. They have studied your history and your culture. What's their assessment? They classify humanity as a developing warrior species with moderate potential. They believe you have promise but lack the advanced technology and experience to pose a real threat. When were they planning to make contact? Santos asked. Originally, within the next 5 years. They wanted to wait until you had established permanent colonies beyond Earth. The trials are more educational when there are multiple targets, Dr. Kim paled. Multiple targets? They would attack your colonies first to see how you respond, how you organize your defenses, how you coordinate between worlds, how you handle civilian evacuations. Each attack would be more serious than the last. But our rescue of you changed that timeline? Santos asked. Veltar nodded sadly. Yes. The fact that you responded to our distress call shows them that you are already exploring deep space, that you have ships capable of interstellar travel, that you are willing to help strangers. Those sound like good things. To us, yes. To the assembly, it means you are ready for testing. My ship sent an automatic status report when we first entered your system. That report will have reached assembly space by now. Santos stood and began pacing. How long do we have? Scout ships could arrive within weeks to verify the report. The actual trial fleet, Veltar calculated in his head, perhaps 6 months if we are fortunate. 6 months to prepare for a galactic invasion force. Captain Santos, you must understand, the assembly does not send their full military might against new species. That would be wasteful and would not provide good data. They will send enough ships to test your capabilities thoroughly, but not so many that the outcome is predetermined. Commander Torres laughed bitterly. How generous of them. It is not generosity. It is practicality. If the trials are too easy, they learn nothing about your true potential. If they are too hard, they might accidentally destroy a species that could have been valuable. Dr. Harper looked up from her notes. Have any species ever surprised them? A few. The Krillian Empire held out for 3 years and earned significant respect. The Nexus Confederation actually won their first trial before losing the second. Both were granted high positions in the assembly hierarchy. And species that won multiple trials? Veltar was quiet for a long moment. There are rumors of one species long ago that won every trial the assembly sent against them. But those are just stories. Legends told by traders and diplomats to entertain each other during long journeys. Santos stopped pacing. What happened to them in the stories? They disappeared. Some say the assembly destroyed them in secret. Others say they left the galaxy entirely. A few believe they are still out there watching and waiting. The conference room fell silent again. Finally, Santos activated the ship's communication system. All hands, this is the captain. We will be arriving at Earth in 6 hours. Prepare for immediate debriefing of all personnel. This is a code black situation. She turned back to Veltar. I need you to tell our leaders everything you've told us. Every detail about the assembly, their ships, their tactics, their technology. Everything. Of course. But Captain Santos, I must warn you. Knowledge alone will not be enough. The assembly has conquered thousands of worlds. They have ships that can shatter moons, weapons that can burn planets, warriors who have trained for centuries in the art of war. Then we'll have to get creative. Creative? Santos smiled grimly. It's a human trait. When we can't win by the rules, we change the rules. 6 hours later, the horizon dropped out of hyperspace near Earth. The blue marble of home had never looked so precious or so vulnerable. As they approached the orbital shipyard, Santos could see that something had changed. New ships were under construction, and the defensive platforms around Earth had been reinforced. It looks like someone's been busy, Torres observed. Santos nodded. The government had clearly taken their preliminary report seriously, but as she looked at Earth's modest defenses, she wondered if any amount of preparation would be enough. In the guest quarters, Captain Veltar stood at a viewport, looking at the blue and white world below. His skin had turned a pale green that his human friends had learned indicated deep thought. He had told them everything he could about the assembly, but he had not told them everything he knew about humanity. The scout reports he had seen described humans as moderately promising, warriors with standard technological development. But the humans who had rescued him were not standard anything. They had traveled across interstellar space to help strangers. They had shared their knowledge freely with his crew. They had shown creativity, compassion, and determination that the assembly's rigid mindset could not account for. Most importantly, they had done something no species in the galaxy had ever done. They had made him believe that maybe, just maybe, the assembly could be beaten. As Earth grew larger in the viewport, Veltar made a decision that would have shocked his peaceful people. For the first time in his long life, he found himself hoping for war. Not because he loved violence, but because he loved freedom. And if these strange humans from the small blue world could somehow find a way to break the assembly's stranglehold on the galaxy, then every peaceful species among the stars would have a chance to live without fear. The question was whether humanity would rise to meet this impossible challenge, or become just another entry in the assembly's long list of conquered worlds. Admiral David Chen stood in the command center of Earth's orbital defense platform, watching the tactical display with growing satisfaction. 6 months had passed since the Horizon returned with Captain Veltar and news of the galactic threat. 6 months of the most intensive military buildup in human history. "Report," he ordered his aide. "All fleets are in position, Admiral. The Terran defense grid is at full operational status. We have 437 combat vessels ready for action, plus automated defense platforms throughout the system." Chen nodded. When the governments of Earth had learned about the assembly, the response had been swift and decisive. Every space-capable nation had contributed ships, technology, and personnel to what they now called the Terran Defense Force. Old enemies had become allies overnight. When faced with an external threat that made their earthly conflicts seem trivial. "Any word from the deep space sensors?" "Yes, sir. We're tracking multiple contacts at the edge of the system. The assembly scout force appears to be exactly what Captain Veltar predicted. 12 ships moderate size moving in standard reconnaissance formation." Chen studied the display. The enemy ships were still 8 hours away, giving him time to make final preparations. But he wasn't worried about the scouts. He was worried about what would come after them. On the bridge of the flagship UES Defiance, Captain Maria Santos reviewed her fleet's deployment one final time. She had been promoted to admiral after her successful first contact mission, but she had chosen to stay aboard a ship rather than coordinate from a safe bunker on Earth. Her command included vessels from every spacefaring nation, sleek American destroyers, massive Russian battleships, advanced European carriers, and cutting-edge Asian cruisers. They had been designed and built in secret over the past decade, officially for asteroid mining and system defense. In reality, Earth's leaders had been preparing for this moment long before they knew it was coming. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the orbital platform," her communications officer reported. "Put Admiral Chen through." Chen's face appeared on her screen. "Maria, the scouts are maintaining their approach vector. No deviation from Veltar's prediction so far." "Good. Any changes to the plan?" "Negative. Let them get close enough to scan our defenses, then make contact according to protocol. We want them to see exactly what they're dealing with." Santos nodded. The plan was risky but necessary. Instead of hiding their capabilities, they would reveal them gradually, letting the assembly scouts think they understood human strength while keeping their true capabilities hidden. In the guest quarters of the Defiance, Captain Veltar watched the preparations with a mixture of awe and terror. The humans had built a fleet that could challenge an assembly battle group, and they had done it in 6 months. The scale of their achievement was unprecedented in galactic history, but he also knew what the assembly was capable of when truly threatened. If humanity showed too much strength too quickly, the trials would escalate beyond anything they could handle. "Captain Veltar," a voice said behind him. He turned to see Dr. Elizabeth Harper, now serving as the fleet's xenobiological advisor. "Dr. Harper, how are the preparations proceeding?" "As well as can be expected. I wanted to ask you about assembly psychology. When they see our fleet, what will their reaction be?" Veltar considered the question carefully. "Surprise initially, then professional interest. They will want to study your tactics and technology, but they will also be pleased." "Pleased?" "The assembly values worthy opponents. A species that can mount a serious defense is more valuable than one that surrenders immediately. Your fleet will convince them that humanity is worth the effort of a proper trial." Dr. Harper looked troubled. "And if we perform too well? Then they will send more ships, much more. The assembly has resources beyond your imagination, Dr. Harper. They can afford to lose the first wave if it means learning how to defeat you." Before she could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The assembly scouts had arrived. On the bridge, Admiral Santos watched as 12 alien vessels dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. They were unlike anything in Earth's databases, sleek predators of metal and energy that seemed to hunger for battle even while just moving through space. "Size comparison?" she asked. "Each scout ship is approximately twice the size of our largest battleship," reported her tactical officer, "but Veltar says they're lightly armed for reconnaissance purposes. Communications, open a channel on all frequencies." "Channel open, Admiral." Santos took a breath. This was humanity's second first contact, but unlike their meeting with the Zephyrians, this one would determine the fate of their species. "Assembly vessels. This is Admiral Maria Santos of the Terran Defense Force. You have entered the Sol system without permission. State your intentions." The response came in perfect English, though the voice carried an alien accent that suggested the speaker was more accustomed to violence than diplomacy. Terran vessels. "I am War Commander Thrak of the Hegemonic Assembly. We come to evaluate your species for possible integration into our civilization. Prepare to demonstrate your military capabilities." "We did not invite evaluation, War Commander. You're not welcome here." There was a pause, then what might have been laughter. "Your welcome is not required, Primitive. The Assembly tests all developing species. You will participate in the trials, or your world will be marked for resource extraction." Santos looked at her tactical display. The scout ships had spread out in a search pattern, scanning everything in the system. Let them look, she thought. They needed to see this. All ships, and she broadcast on the fleet frequency. "Execute Formation Alpha. Show them what they're dealing with." Across the solar system, the Terran Defense Force revealed itself. Ships powered up from stealth mode behind asteroids. Defense platforms armed their weapons. Fighter squadrons launched from hidden bases on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. In minutes, the Assembly scouts found themselves surrounded by a military force that should not have existed. According to their intelligence, Earth barely had chemical rockets. Instead, they faced hundreds of warships with fusion drives and weapons that registered as significant threats on their sensors. War Commander Thrak stared at his tactical display in shock. Either their intelligence was completely wrong, or this species had hidden their true capabilities until the moment of contact. Both possibilities were disturbing. "Analysis," he demanded. His tactical officer worked frantically at his station. "Sir, I count over 400 combat vessels. Most appear to be recently constructed, but use advanced propulsion and weapon systems. They have also deployed orbital defense platforms around their primary world." "How is this possible?" "Our scouts reported a primitive species with basic spaceflight." "Unknown, sir. But their fleet positioning suggests significant tactical knowledge. They have us surrounded and outgunned." Thrak considered his options. He could attack and probably destroy several human ships before being overwhelmed, which would provide valuable combat data. Or he could withdraw and report this unexpected development to the Assembly High Command. "Terran Admiral," he said finally, "your fleet is impressive for such a young species, but you face only scouts. The actual trials will require much greater strength." "Then bring your trials, War Commander. We'll be waiting." Another pause. "The Assembly recognizes your challenge. A trial fleet will arrive within 30 days to test your worthiness. If you survive, you will be granted the honor of serving the Assembly. If you fail, your world will burn." "We'll be here," Santos replied calmly. The scout ships powered up their hyperdrives and vanished into the void, leaving the human fleet alone in their system. In the command center, Admiral Chen allowed himself a small smile. "Phase 1 complete." "They bought it." "Bought what?" asked his aide. "They think what they saw was our full strength. 400 ships, standard formation, conventional tactics. They have no idea what we're really capable of." On the Defiance, Captain Veltar approached Admiral Santos with something like wonder in his large eyes. "Admiral, in all the history of the galaxy, no species has ever bluffed the Assembly. You just convinced them you are a standard warrior race with moderate capabilities. That was the idea. When they come back, they'll bring a trial fleet size to defeat what they think they saw today. And what they will actually face." Santos smiled grimly. "Something the Assembly has never encountered before. They're about to learn that humans don't just fight wars. We revolutionize them." As Earth's defenders prepared for the real battle to come, none of them knew that their actions had already changed the course of galactic history. Across the galaxy, other oppressed species had heard rumors of the human fleet that had faced down Assembly scouts. For the first time in centuries, some of them began to hope. The Assembly thought they were dealing with another warrior race. They had no idea they were about to face something far more dangerous, a species that refused to accept the rules of the game. 30 days after the scout encounter, the Assembly trial fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. War Commander Thrak studied the tactical display from his flagship's bridge, confident that this time he would see a proper demonstration of Assembly superiority. "Fleet status?" he demanded. 60 vessels operational, sir. Mix of battle cruisers, destroyers, and assault ships. More than sufficient to handle the human defense force." Thrak nodded. The Assembly had faced hundreds of species over the millennia, and they had perfected the art of calibrated warfare. "Send too few ships and you learned nothing useful. Send too many, and you destroyed a potentially valuable opponent before understanding their capabilities. The humans had shown unexpected strength, but they were still primitives. This fleet would test them properly. Begin the approach. Standard trial formation. Target their orbital defense platforms first. Meanwhile, Admiral Santos stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the enemy fleet advance. Around her, the bridge crew worked with calm efficiency, but she could feel the tension in the air. This was the moment humanity had been preparing for since the day they learned they were not alone in the universe. Admiral, her communications officer reported, "We're receiving a transmission from the assembly fleet. Put it through." War Commander Thrax's image appeared on the main screen. He looked exactly like the warrior he was. Tall, muscular, with scarred features and eyes that had seen too many battles. "Admiral Santos," he said with what might have been respect, "I am War Commander Thrax of the Assembly Trial Fleet. You impressed our scouts, but now you face true warriors. Surrender your world and your species will be granted an honorable place in the Assembly hierarchy." "Counteroffer," Santos replied calmly. "Leave our system now and we won't destroy your entire fleet." Thrax's expression shifted to something between amusement and disbelief. "You face 60 warships with crews that have conquered 100 worlds. Your bravado is admirable but foolish. We'll see. You have 1 minute to begin your withdrawal, War Commander." "I think not. All ships commence the trial. Target their defense platforms." The assembly fleet opened fire with weapons that could crack planets. Energy beams and missile salvos streaked toward Earth's orbital defenses, expecting to overwhelm the primitive human technology. Instead, they struck shimmering barriers that absorbed the attacks completely. "What?" Thrax stared at his tactical display in confusion. "Report. Sir, their defense platforms are protected by some kind of energy shield we don't recognize. Our weapons are having no effect." Before Thrax could respond, space around his fleet began to fill with new contacts. Hundreds of them, then thousands. "Admiral," Santos said calmly, "meet the real Terran Defense Force." The stealth fields dropped, revealing the true extent of human preparation. Not 400 ships, but 4,000. Hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt had been working around the clock, building vessels with technology that shouldn't have existed. But the ships themselves were only part of the surprise. As the assembly fleet tried to target the new arrivals, they discovered that human vessels could move in ways that defied physics. They phased in and out of normal space, appeared behind enemy ships without crossing the intervening distance, and fired weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. "Impossible," Thrax whispered. "No species develops this technology so quickly." On Earth's orbital command center, Admiral Chen watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. The assembly thought they understood warfare, but they had never faced an opponent that had spent decades preparing specifically for them. "All ships," he broadcast, "execute Plan Omega. Show them what human innovation looks like." The revelation was devastating. Humanity hadn't just built a larger fleet, they had revolutionized space combat itself. Veltar's warnings about assembly capabilities had sent human scientists down research paths that other species had never considered. Quantum entanglement communication allowed perfect coordination between ships. Dimensional phase technology let them attack from impossible angles, and their artificial intelligence systems could process tactical data faster than any biological mind. "Sir," Thrax's tactical officer reported with barely controlled panic, "we've lost 18 ships in the first wave. Their weapons are cutting through our shields like they aren't there." "How is this possible?" On the Defiance, Captain Veltar watched the battle with a mixture of awe and terror. The humans weren't just winning, they were redefining what victory meant. He had spent his life in a galaxy where the assembly ruled through superior firepower and tactics. Now he was seeing those advantages neutralized by opponents who had refused to accept the fundamental assumptions of galactic warfare. "Admiral Santos," he said quietly, "what have your people done?" "What we always do when we can't win by the existing rules," she replied. "We changed the game." The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the mighty assembly trial fleet had been reduced to 12 crippled ships desperately trying to escape into hyperspace. The rest had been captured or destroyed by an enemy that should not have existed. War Commander Thrax stood on his damaged bridge, staring at the aftermath in shock. In 2,000 years of assembly expansion, no trial fleet had ever been defeated. Bloodied, yes. Reduced occasionally, but never routed by primitives who had barely reached their own moon a century ago. "Terran Admiral," he said finally, his voice hollow with defeat. "How? You told us the rules of your game, War Commander. We decided to play by different rules. This changes everything. The Assembly has never faced anything like your fleet. They will send everything they have." Santos nodded calmly. "We're counting on it. We've sent a message to every species in the galaxy. Any world that wants protection from the Assembly is welcome in the Terran sphere. We're offering something the galaxy has never seen before, an alternative to your empire of warriors." Thrak's remaining ships limped away into hyperspace, carrying news that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The Assembly had been challenged and defeated by a species that shouldn't have been able to threaten them. Within days, the news spread across the galaxy through trading networks and diplomatic channels. The impossible had happened. The Assembly could be beaten. On worlds throughout known space, oppressed species began to hope. Peaceful traders like the Zephyrians whispered about the humans who had protected their ship and given them sanctuary. Enslaved populations heard rumors of a new power that valued freedom over conquest. The Assembly High Council convened an emergency session, facing a crisis they had never imagined. For the first time in their history, other species were choosing to resist rather than submit. Client states were questioning their loyalty. Vassal worlds were declaring independence, all because of one small blue world that had refused to accept the way things had always been. 6 months later, Admiral Santos stood on the observation deck of the TES Liberation, the captured and retrofitted Assembly flagship. Around Earth, a growing fleet of Allied vessels represented dozens of species that had chosen freedom over servitude. Captain Veltar approached, his skin showing the bright green that indicated happiness among his people. "Admiral, I have news from the outer territories. 17 more worlds have requested entry into the Terran sphere. The Assembly's client states are beginning to crack. And the Assembly itself, still debating how to respond. Some factions want to negotiate. Others demand a war of extinction against humanity. But they are no longer united, and that unity was their greatest strength." Santos nodded, looking out at the stars. "What have we started, Veltar?" The Zephyrians' response rippled with what humans had learned to recognize as laughter. "A simple SOS, Admiral. We called for rescue, and you rescued an entire galaxy. As the sun set behind Earth, casting long shadows across the orbital shipyards where human and alien engineers worked side by side, Santos reflected on the strange journey that had brought them here. It had begun with a distress call from strangers in the void. It had become something no one could have predicted, a revolution that was reshaping the very nature of galactic civilization. The Assembly still existed, still controlled vast regions of space. But their absolute dominion was broken. For the first time in 2 millennia, the galaxy had choices, and it all started because humanity had done something the Assembly considered impossible. They had answered a cry for help from beings they had never met, asking for nothing in return but the chance to do what was right. As more ships arrived daily, carrying refugees and volunteers from across the galaxy, Santos realized that they had created something unprecedented, an interstellar civilization based not on conquest, but on cooperation. Not on the strength to dominate others, but on the strength to protect those who could not protect themselves. The war with the Assembly was far from over. But humanity had already won the only victory that truly mattered. They had proven that there was another way. And that knowledge would spread through the galaxy like wildfire, lighting the way to a future that none of them could have imagined when a simple distress call first reached Earth from the stars.